It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this. I'm Jeff Grubb. I write for GamesBeat.com. This is GrubbSnax on GiantBomb.com. If you are watching live, thank you. You can ask a question by hitting the Ask a Question button up at the top of the page. If you're watching live on Twitch, which we are now streaming to at the same time, I'm not reading your chat, but you can hop over to GiantBomb.com/chat. Come hang out with us over there and ask your questions there by hitting the Ask a Question button at the top of the page. I've got a few things to talk about, just two big things to talk about. I think I might also want to talk about the PlayStation State of Play. Let's hop into all that, and then we'll get to your questions. Let's start with the PlayStation State of Play. That was weird to me. I realized PlayStation State of Plays are not for us, is kind of how it's feeling. Now, if you like the show, if you like the State of Play yesterday, I'm happy for you. I think that's totally possible, and I'm not upset about it. And in no way am I upset. It's just a bunch of games that either I wasn't excited about or I need to see more of to know if I'm excited about it. And then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection, which is very exciting. But it definitely feels like the State of Play, like I got caught up in the hype again, like I always do. Like it just convinced me that it was going to be worth covering and worth covering live, and it was going to be all this exciting stuff and all these rumors pointed in that direction. And I was like predicting we'd see Resident Evil 4 Remake and Final Fantasy 16. It didn't help that they said we're going to be talking about our games from our Japanese publishers. I'm like, well, you can't do that and not bring Final Fantasy 16. Apparently you can. But the thing here is that this just feels like Sony communicating to their partners and less communicating to us. And by that, I just mean like, it feels like when they're negotiating, or even if they're having casual conversations with developers, they are saying stuff along the lines of, and if you come and you do this with us, part of this contract will be us committing a certain marketing budget to you, including putting you in a State of Play, which is worth this amount of money. And all that. It just feels like it's that sort of thing where it's like, they have a State of Play, so they have a bargaining chip when they're talking to developers. And that's what it feels like it's really all about, and not necessarily like putting on an entertaining show or putting on something that is, gonna wow you in the way that an E3 or PlayStation showcase does. Again, is that okay? Absolutely, that's totally okay. What is it? I didn't pay anything to watch that show. They don't have to actually entertain me. I don't love that they wasted my time, but it doesn't seem like it's a waste of their time, and that's what they care about. So I have full autonomy over deciding how I spend my hours of my life, and it's not their fault that I bought into the hype. Okay, let's talk about Dead Space. Dead Space was originally going to come out, or they were targeting October internally at EA and EA Motive, the developer of the remake. That is no longer the case. They have pushed it internally from a target of October to a target of early 2023. So if you are looking forward to that game, they're going to give it a little bit more time. This is not a sign that the game is in trouble. It is more about them just wanting to make sure that they get the best game out there as possible. This is a game that, if it is successful, it can lay the groundwork for a future where they have a lot of other Dead Space remake games, Dead Space 2, 3. They begin taking in a new direction of like, okay, we're going to build on this new remake sort of timeline and do all this really interesting stuff. And these games could make a lot of money. And this game on its own, if it is successful, if it is critically acclaimed, it could sell 10 million copies. It could sell more than that. It could be a huge hit. And you kind of don't want to mess with that by rushing it out. And I think everyone involved knows that. Also, it's like really hard to get talent right now, something we talk about every week on GrubbSnax, where, if you're able to attract talent, that's one thing. If you're able to keep talent, that's a whole nother. And both those things are very challenging right now. So they're probably working a bit short-staffed. And what choice do they have other than to just kind of give it more time and more space to breathe and let people sort of work at the pace that they're able to work at? This also could, if this is a success, could lead to EA sort of being convinced internally that it's worth it to even approach even other single-player adventure games. Dead Space worked. What's next? That sort of thing. They're on that trajectory from like, okay, they saw Resident Evil Remake worked over at Capcom. Jedi Fallen Order worked internally really well. Now, if Dead Space works, well, now clearly, while we are very much concerned with live service games and selling you microtransactions and FIFA Ultimate Team, yeah, we are definitely going to keep doing that stuff. But now we have this other pillar of blockbuster single-player adventure games that we are now getting better and better at making. And so, there's basically a lot riding on Dead Space. And so when the stakes are that high, they're going to take their time to make sure they get it right. Even though one of the benefits of making a Dead Space remake is that remakes are relatively easy compared to traditional development. And so they're easier. There's already a blueprint laid out for you. You know what works, you know what doesn't. That's why Capcom is able to get these games out pretty quickly at a really a relatively rapid pace. And that's one of the reasons that EA decided to do this. And yet they still are going to need a little bit more time. EA Motive has not done one of these big remakes before. And so they're like, hey, let's just get this right, lay the groundwork. And if the groundwork is strong and the foundation is strong, there's a lot that can be built on top of it. Then finally, before we get to the questions, we have Lucasfilm and Quantic Dream and Star Wars Eclipse and David Cage. Why is Lucasfilm sort of tolerating David Cage and Quantic Dream, especially now that the game is not going to come out till 2027 or 2028, as I've been able to confirm and it's been reported elsewhere. The big thing there is that the way that these deals are structured is that Lucasfilm is taking on very little, if any, of the financial risk. And so, like, that's the whole idea of the licensing model, right? Where a company comes and says, hey, can we use your license? Either we're going to pay you up front or we're going to have some structured deal that enables us to use the license and we'll make a game for you. I mean, EA, like Lucasfilm did not give money to EA to make any of those games. Lucasfilm was not giving money to Ubisoft for Ubisoft to make those games. That's not how it works. Lucasfilm is almost certainly not giving money to Quantic Dream to do that. Financially, there's like very little risk, and Quantic Dream and David Cage are almost certainly promising to make the game of Lucasfilm's dreams, the game that EA said they would make, tried a couple times, and failed. They were making Ragtag, which was kind of going to be like this openish narrative game, and then that kind of fell apart. And then Lucasfilm was like, okay, take all those resources and move it to Orca and make that game instead. And then the EA tried and it fell apart. And Lucasfilm was very frustrated with EA because of those situations. And then on top of that, they are still desperate to get these more open, bigger, narrative-driven Star Wars games. And Jedi Fallen Order is definitely in that vein, like it's getting close to that, but they want bigger and better and more. That's one of the reasons. One of the companies, what company did they go to? Ubisoft. What kind of games did they make? Well, it's the kind of games that EA really wants, but it's not, they don't just want one, they want a couple of these going. They want them to be slightly different. And so they've also took this pitch from David Cage. David Cage almost certainly promising them exactly what they wanted in order to sort of make this happen. And he's promising them the game of their dreams, where it's like, yeah, it's going to be open action adventure Star Wars game with a lot of story and a lot of characters, and we'll do it in the High Republic, which is your new thing that you're desperate also to set up. Like, you got the books going, you want to have other mediums sort of approaching the High Republic. Well, how about a big video game that's going to have like really good Quantic Dream style graphics? Isn't that exciting? And Lucasfilm's like, yes, that's exactly what we want. And so we're willing to sort of buy into what you're selling us here, even if it seems very unlikely that he's going to be able to deliver on those promises. And part of that was Quantic Dream being like, okay, great. Now we need your help to put out a trailer to attract talent to come work on this game. Can we make a trailer and put it in the PlayStation Showcase and say that this game is being made? And Lucasfilm was at first pretty hesitant about that. They're like, we don't really want it. Like, it's too early. We don't want to do that. And Quantic Dream's like, listen, it's really hard to attract talent right now. We need to do that. Let us do this. And they ended up relenting and let him do that. And now it's like, okay, even still, 2027 at the earliest is just so far. 5 years from now is so far away that it really feels like this game could fall apart. But in that case, if it falls apart and never comes out, again, it's just no skin off of Lucasfilm's back. Not really. That's the benefit. So that's why they like the licensing model so much. So, I hear you. If you like, I was talking to Imran Khan on Twitter. We were like, why are they doing this? And I didn't know at that time. I've kind of looked around since and kind of, this is what I've heard. But it's like, yeah, I probably wouldn't do business with David Cage, but I think Lucasfilm's just like, we really want one of these games. We're desperate for it. And also he's saying he can make it. So whatever. And if he doesn't, if he fails, oh well. Okay. Let's get to the questions. I'm going to hop into those now. If you are watching live, go ahead, hit that ask a question button, and I'll do my best to get to as many of those as I possibly can. Let's get into it. Let's start with Slain McAwesome. Did you ask your daughter yet, is Gex a meep? We deserve to know. I forgot, but I did ask her if Kermit is a meep, and she said no. So Kermit the Frog, not a meep. Blooper, I did get her a blooper stuffed animal. I think I did that right after the show last week. I got her it's like a big blooper. That is a meep. And she's been carrying that around everywhere and taking it with her. And that's a meep. Kermit the Frog, not a meep. So I think this actually makes the Gex question even more interesting, because who knows what she's going to say. I'll find out, though. I want to, like, sit her down and just rapid fire, like, what is this? What is this? But, I'm busy. From Dude Long Couch, what's your pouch config in Elden Ring? The pouch is one where you hold down Y, right? So I have my potion of mystical physical wackadoo on the top, up on the D-pad. Right is heal. Down is replenish FP, flower power. And left is call up the horse. That is my pouch. And it's, I'm not going to change that throughout the entire game, I don't think. So everything else is on the, the X button. Is that what it is? Yeah, the X button. So, and then I just, scroll through it by pressing down, and I have stuff like some summons there and stuff like that. From Jordan Midler. Hey, boss. Hope you're well. What are you hearing about Starfield? Seems like it's due for a big blowout at E3, then a release. But do you think Microsoft and Bethesda Game Studios are hesitant since this game has to be great and not a Cyberpunk? Love ya. Yeah, but I think that's built in. I think that's always been built in. I love you too, Jordan. That feels like why, this game was probably in a state where it's like, if they would have rushed it, if they would have really crunched last year, they probably could have got it out last November or maybe March even. Right now, I guess they could get it out like right now, but I think they're like, no, we are going to spend all this time polishing this game. We can't release a game like Fallout 76 again, at least. It can be as buggy as Skyrim or Fallout 4 or something like that. That's just sort of intrinsic to our games until we get them out into the world. And also, it hasn't cost us any sales problems or even like critical problems. It's just sort of like the things that a certain audience that kind of isn't sure about these games picks up on. And so it's like they get away with a lot of that stuff, and they will continue to try to get away with that. But there's like tiers there, and the tier of like Fallout 4, Skyrim is one thing, Fallout 76 is another, Cyberpunk is another thing as well, and they are fully aware that they can't do that. That is why this game was scheduled for when it was scheduled, and it's why they've been spending basically this entire last half a year polishing up the game, and the rest of this next half year is going to be the same thing. It's like leading up until November, it's going to be nonstop, making sure this game makes it as great a first impression as it possibly can. It's Ami asks, hello, Grub Baron of Snackistan. Do you have any additional information about the US-based PlayStation Studios workplace sexism allegations? Thanking you. Thank you. I don't. Just what's been publicly reported. This is something that they've been trying to get dismissed for a while at PlayStation, but it's also very unsurprising. It's inherent to a lot of tech companies in America specifically as well. There's always bro cultures at these companies, and it sounds like that got to PlayStation as well. And it's hard to tell, like, what was this part of the reason? Like, a few years ago, it felt like there was a clearing out of people on the U.S. side of things. Like, it's hard to say, oh, was that related to this, or was that a coincidence and was just part of like Europe grabbing more power instead of PlayStation? So everyone in the U.S. is like, oh, we don't have a way up anymore. But it definitely feels like this was bound to come to a head at some point, and now here we are. And I hope that the many women came forward. I think 8 more women came forward specifically to ensure that this case wouldn't get dismissed. So Well, that's incredible that they were willing to do that. That's awesome. Hopefully the case meets justice. From Z-Crits, is a new Resident Evil remake for Code Veronica on the horizon? Yeah, I mean, I got caught up in the state of play thing where it's like, the state of play, here it's coming, and I'm like, okay, I'm not hearing anything about it. Like, I'm not hearing like what's going to be in the state of play. But then, you start talking to other people who hear stuff, and you start seeing people react online about how they're getting so hyped for this state of play. And then you hear some other, like the PlayStation community insiders are like, this is the big one. This is like, they have a lot to announce. There's going to be so much in this one. And so I'm like, okay, well, I mean, the things that make sense, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Final Fantasy 16, all this other stuff. And it's none of it. None of it was there. Resident Evil 4 Remake does still seem like it's imminent, though. We should hear about it pretty soon. That sounds right. So just give that a little bit of time. A little bit of time could mean the next couple of months. But it does seem imminent. From Mighty War Canoe, what's the status of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines now? It was supposed to come out in March 2020 and now has a completely different developer. Will it ever see the light of day? I believe that it is in a state of sort of internal reboot, at least where it's like they're going to reboot the marketing cycle at the very least. The next time we see that game, they will be like, hey, we've been working on it. It's changed internally, or maybe the game has changed a little bit. But all the stuff we talked about before doesn't really apply anymore. All that stuff about March 2020 just does not apply to what we're doing now. Here is the new coming out of this game. And congratulations. You're talking about the sequel, I'm sure, the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, right? Because it's probably going to be. Yes, it's probably going to need another reintroduction to the public and then another marketing cycle leading up to its release at that point. From Slame McAwesome, will we ever get a sequel or reboot of Shogo Mobile Armor Division? No idea. I don't know. Yes, I'll just say yes. And I hope that's a good thing for you. Hope you don't hate the game. From Casual, dear Chef Grubb, how are you? I'm pretty good. Thanks for asking. 2015, we got Crypt of the Necrodancer, Cadence of Hyrule in 2019. It's 2022. Where's the next rhythm gem from that studio? What I'm really asking is, when is Danny B going to get to play with Castlevania or Mario tracks? Yeah, that'd be pretty good. I don't know. It does seem like the kind of thing that would fit really well with, taking that gameplay and mashing it up with different characters and different music, and you kind of want iconic music. So something Konami or something Nintendo makes a lot of sense. And, they already did Zelda, so I would love to see it. From Kane Highwind09, hey, Mr. Snacks, I got to go to work, so I'll check this out later. But what do you think there are more of in the world? Doors or wheels? Shoot. Wheels. There's more wheels than doors. Oh, no. There's more wheels than doors, right? Someone do the math on it for me. In my gut, more wheels than doors. Because, there's often, there's a lot of doors in houses, though. I'm like one house per door. That's not right. That's not right. There's doors. It's doors. Because now I'm thinking about it inside of think about a skyscraper with there's a door into each office or room or flat. And then there's multiple doors inside of there. And not everyone has a car. And oh no, this stinks. I don't like this. Cars do have doors too. Shit. It's doors. Wow. The turn on that. Dramatic. It's got to be doors. Okay, I got to move on. I will just obsess on this. From Mock Bucket 62, who do you consider a greater rival, Dan Reichert or Greg Miller? Greg Miller's just a little pile of shit. No one cares about him. He's nothing. Dan Reichert is a formidable foe. Almost caught up to me in Astro's speedrun levels. He did not. He is still significantly behind me. It's embarrassing actually for him. But he did at least put a little pressure on me. Greg Miller's just, I got a platinum trophy. Oh, look at me. I got another platinum. What is that? No one cares about that. It's a me. Is magic the play, sorcery, or incantations? Yeah, I've been doing a lot of magic. Sorcery is what I'm doing. I actually respect and kind of put everything into intelligence just so I could fire that big comet spell. And then I'm not able to beat Rodon right now. So I'm like, wonder if I may be respecting correctly, but I don't know how to dodge not his meteor when he comes back in the second phase, but when in the second phase, he casts a bunch of meteors and they always hit me. I think maybe I need to get off the horse and dodge them. I don't know. You tell me. Someone in the chat knows better than I do. From Mr. McCrinkledink, with GMG being successful in their push for unionization, do you think more developers will do so in the future? Yeah, I think so. I think it's sort of, I think it's both coincidental and just part of a wider trend. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to some podcasts from people I don't necessarily agree with, and they were like, the reason that people in games media care about unions right now is because they really just care about their own unions, and they're trying to convince people to go do the unionizing game development so that they can be like, oh, our union is also important. And I just think that's a bad read on the situation. It just seems like the wider trend is towards unionization across an entire generation, and game development is going to come to it on their own terms, and not because Kotaku unionized. But not because Kotaku got a really good deal and has long been unionized. But I do think that their push is going to encourage everyone who's in a similar situation to be like, okay, not only can you get a union, but in your contract negotiations, you can get stuff that's feels like could have been very easily dismissed by management, like full medical support for trans employees and stuff like that. That's like that's the kind of thing that's very easy to see management just be like, oh, how many people are trans? 1% of people, and that kind of thing, where it's just they push out numbers like they actually care about whatever. And so, but it's like, oh no, we're taking a stand, and we believe that's important. We have people that would affect, and they were able to get those wins. And I think seeing a union get a win like that is important. From Fridgewater, after the Ouya, the Coleco Chameleon, etc., why do smaller companies keep trying to make a console happen? Looking at you in television, and why do people keep investing in them? Part of this has got to be just that it's pretty easy to do this. That's not entirely true. The Intellivision Amico clearly is a clusterfuck and is not easy. But if you're a Soldier Boy, slapping your name on a console from China is pretty easy. And that's also something that I know people tore Soldier Boy apart for that stuff. And the system itself was bad and all that. And it was, with marketing, it deserved to be criticized. Absolutely. But also, it's the kind of thing that happens all the time. People buy stuff from AliExpress, put a label on it. It's a white label product. They put their label on it and they sell it. That's most of clothing. So it's the kind of thing where it's it is pretty easy to just sort of end up in a situation where it's we want to make an investment. What's a good idea? What's a good business plan? Oh, let's just make a console. I think it's kind of what happened with Atari, where they were SoCs for AMD platform is getting pretty affordable. Let's just kind of mess around with that, bring back the Atari VCS, and try to appeal to that audience. And I think for the most part, these things are modestly, in a case like the Atari VCS, which is, I know Jeff didn't like it, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And I had a pretty good experience with it. But it's what does it have to do? It's just kind of I'm not going to buy a lot of games on it. All it kind of needs to do is get a little bit of a buzz and sell a few units and stuff like that. And it's probably a modestly successful venture for them. Not going to be the basis of their entire business going forward. From Doug Foot. Hello, Mr. Grubb. Will Sony announce PSVR 2 in its own show later this spring? Or do you think it will be packaged into their summer showcase event in July or August? I will lean toward its own show around the springtime. It seems like the kind of thing where... I think that's right. It seems like the kind of thing where it's they want to give it a good push toward the release, and you want to have a big showcase, gives people a chance to pre-order and stuff and all and stuff like that. 6 months out seems about right, and then they release it later this year. From Zekrits, who is the best Ghostbuster? Trying to remember, I think I liked Winston the best as a kid. Winston was my favorite. And probably now he probably is my favorite too, because he's the most blue collar, right? And the most kind of just doing a job, and that's what those movies were always about. The show was less about that, but the movies were definitely about just this is a blue collar job. This is just an exterminator service. They're going to come in and do their job and get out, and it's long hours, and they have achy backs and stuff like that. And Winston's just like, I'm here for the paycheck. I'll believe whatever you want. I dig that. From Christian ARG, are you late because you were playing Elden Ring? I mean, listen, who could say? Now, I'm late because I had to write this Dead Space devs push remake release target out of 2022, which I just posted to gamesbeat.com. I'll just retweet that. Let me just retweet that. Mike yelled at me last week because was it last week? Maybe it was the week before that. But the big news about in New Vegas 2 and how they're talking about it in its early talks, and I'm like, that's not enough to do a story. And then they did a story on VGC, and it was like huge, massive story for them. So I'm like, okay, I get it. I'll try to do better at making sure my stories are ready to go up when I do GrubbSnax. So I almost got started, and it was like, oh no, it's not written yet. So I just did it real quick. Which version of Turtles in Time is the best? I don't know. I kind of just I'm a Turtles guy, or I was as a kid, but I wasn't super into the games. I know people really like Turtles in Time, but I don't know if I have an opinion on this one, actually. I'm excited about the collection specifically because I didn't play most Turtles games. And I know people have a real soft spot for them. I think many of them are very good, and I think many of them are very hard. And I think the music is always very good in them. So I'm going to go back to them with like fresh eyes and kind of be like, I will determine what is the best now going forward, not with the biased eyes of nostalgia. From Nintendo. Every day that passes by where Final Fantasy Pixel remasters aren't announced for consoles is another day that passes where my anxiety that it'll never happen increases. Why does Square Enix not want my money? Yeah, I heard it was going to be early this year, and then Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster got delayed on PC, right? And then it came out, but they delayed it a little bit, and that seemed to throw everything off. But it's got to happen. They want your money. They do. But they want you to buy it twice. That's how much they want your money. From It's Just Kevin V. Got any info on that AEW game? I do not. Mike has got kind of a relationship with AEW a little bit, and I think he's kind of been trying to like build that relationship into like, damn, hey, when you're ready to show that thing off for real, let me know. So hopefully as soon as it's ready for people to hear more about it, we'll be able to tell you more. From Tonicium. You got any insight into how 343 is feeling about Halo / its fan base right now? Lots of fans are half reasonably, half unreasonably angry with the pace of updates. Was 343 multiplayer lead leaving just normal turnover stuff? Yeah, I think that's mostly just normal turnover stuff. People are making decisions based on what's best for them right now in terms of getting the most, and people are like doubling salaries at some places. Like, that's not common, but people are getting a significant boost to their pay by going elsewhere. And if you are the multiplayer lead on Halo Infinite, it's not, the problem isn't the multiplayer. The problem is the content pipeline, right? So that lead is probably in high demand. I think in general I think the way you put it was pretty good. Half reasonably, half unreasonably is how the fans are sort of reacting to this. And I think 343 sort of understands the frustrations and the criticisms, and they're also like, all we can do is the work, and all we can do is as fast as possible. And when we get it out there, either people are going to be happy or they'll find new reasons to be mad. And at that point, it's like all this stuff that's happening now won't matter anymore. We just need to get the work done. These live service games change a million times. Like, I mean, I don't know, guys, look at Destiny. How many times has the popular opinion of what Destiny is changed? It's been like 50 times. It's the best it's ever been. It's terrible right now. There's no content. There's new content. It's really good. There's new content. It's not great. Oh, it's 8 years since Destiny 1. It's the best it's ever been right now. The way that like the wind whips around with live service games, it makes it feel very easy to be like, none of this is permanent. Whatever anyone's feeling right now toward a live service game could be completely the opposite 6 months from now, a year from now. And so while the game is in a bad place right now in terms of getting content and keeping people happy, it's just not permanent. So I don't know. I think that they kind of have to take sort of a that sort of long view approach as one of the people working on the game. From Jono Snow 126, I know there's that Capcom leak, but have you heard anything about Monster Hunter World 2? I've not, other beyond the leak that obviously they are working on that. But obviously they're working on that. That game was very successful for them, sold very well. Seems like the kind of thing that would be even more successful than its predecessor when it launches. Like, it's going to have built up a lot of fans, and there's going to be even more people coming from Rise. And now, like, they're going to want to come back to World, be like, this is the big boy game. Let's go. This is where the big boys play. So yes, it'll be. It's coming. From Upper Nut, hey Jeff, do you think we ever get a third Mario brother? If so, what do you think they would be called? Yeah, we talked about this on a podcast. It would be Spice Orange, and I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think of an Italian name without being offensive. His name would be Lasagna Boy. And he'd be Spice Orange. Lasagna Boy would be Spice Orange, and he would be just a perfect sphere. He'd be a perfect sphere, but very tall. So, man, I should be a character designer. Okay. The chat's got a lot of Giorno, Giovanni, Roberto, Antonio. Antonio's pretty good. I would like to have Mario go and be like, Luigi, Antonio. I should not do the impression. I should just keep going. All right. From Adam 3 times. Any word on when NetherRealm Studios will announce their next game? It's been a while, huh? I thought it was. I think it was in a Reddit, an Ask Me Anything, and I think Ed Boon was like, people were wondering, like, when what we were gonna do, because we've done Mortal Kombat, Injustice, Injustice, right? It's not, yes, Injustice. I always mix it up with Infamous. And then when we stopped doing that, people were like, oh, what are they going to do next? And he's like, what we do next, like when we announce it, it'll make sense why we've sort of gotten to this point. And I thought that was very curious. So again, I've just always heard it's going to be Mortal Kombat 12, but that could change, or maybe it's some other variation on that, or maybe, I don't know. I honestly, at this point, I don't know anymore. But it's gonna happen. They gotta announce it soon. I think they announce it probably this summer, but I keep saying like, oh, they gotta announce it soon, and it doesn't happen. So I'll say at the very least, Mortal Kombat 11. That was the last one, right? That sold very well. Continues to sell very well. Could easily fund whatever they're working on for some time still. So I would just expect that to be. They probably are taking their time because they can. From Hog Trick, Final Fantasy Tactics Remake is still a thing, or is this the case of a Mario Kart 8 being DLC? Is the Final Fantasy Tactics Remake being the DLC? Oh, in the case of the Final Fantasy Tactics Remake actually being the Dio Field Chronicles. That's an interesting point. I didn't consider that actually, but maybe, probably not. I think Final Fantasy Tactics Remake is probably still coming. Although, does that make sense with the Dio Field Chronicles being basically the same thing? I mean, they also have, Triangle Strategy they just launched. And that's basically the same thing too, only much better looking than the Dio Field Chronicles. I don't know. That's a good question. I'll ask around. From Lucer, any insight into what Ken Levine and Ghost Story games are up to, especially now that the narrative Legos idea has been done by other games like Wildermyth? No, but the sense I get is that it's not really going to turn into anything. It's kind of how it's the last I heard. That's kind of what it felt like. It's not going to turn into anything. I'm pretty sure that Jason over Bloomberg had a story about this, right? Didn't he? I would just guess that this is probably gonna fizzle out and they will move on to, I don't even know if Ghost Story games will be a going concern, is kind of what my take on it. Hog Trick, I still think Dio Field is better looking than a DS game. Fair enough. I was being a bit harsh on it. Mostly my issue is with the legibility of what I'm actually looking at. It's very busy and there's like none of the characters stand out, and so I'm like, my eyes are just wandering all over this screenshot of like what is even happening in this game. I like tactics games. I've played tactics games on the DS. The The one DS card I had in my DS the entire time, or it's the 3DS, sorry, was that Ubisoft Tom Clancy's Shadow Warrior or whatever it is, Shadow Realm, Shadow Fighters. It was basically just a Final Fantasy, or I'm sorry, a Fire Emblem or Advanced Wars, but with Tom Clancy characters. And I played that on the 3DS, and it was fine, but it was very legible when I looked at it. Diofield Chronicles is just kind of messy looking, I think, but you're right, better than a DS game. From Revent Dream, likelihood of Capcom making a Mega Man Battle Network / Star Force collection. I think it's pretty highly likely for the most part. I don't know which one of those was the DS games. Was that Star Force? But whatever. The dual screen ones, probably not. Anything that was on a single screen device, probably. As they get through these other Mega Man collections that they've done, they will get to a point where they're like, okay, now it's time for Battle Network. I still don't really know. I've never really known what Battle Network games are. Like, what they actually play like. I remember a million of them coming out, but I just never took the time to play any of them or sit down and figure out what they are. From Hey It's Dale, that new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection apparently has online play for some of the games, including tournament fighters. Any chance it'll have rollback? Digital Eclipse have had it in their games in the past. Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance Digital Eclipse does right by these games. I think that they always try to do what's best for whatever scenario they're presented with. Like, what is the solution to this problem to make sure that it's as good as it possibly can be? And like you said, they've had it in their past games, and it's specifically because it's what it would be best for something like a tournament fighter. So I think there's a strong chance they'll have it. From Lobster Crush, do you have a plan for when someone gifts your daughter a lobster bib or a lobster cracker or something else that has cute meeps on it, but is really designed for eating meeps? Trust me, it will happen eventually. I don't have a plan other than to panic. I will just panic. And she'll once she realizes what's happening, it's going to be devastating. So, listen, I'm just going to have to accept that I have not planned for this situation and panic accordingly. From Kyle Degradable. Good morning. I noticed a huge chunk of the games from the State of Play are multi-plat. Is the idea of getting the marketing deal that people just assume they're exclusive? It's a little bit, maybe, because like I wrote the story about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing, and because at that point I was writing the story, they had not confirmed it was going to be on everything. I'm like, PlayStation announces this, and maybe that helps them. I don't know if it moves the needle all that much, though, because when you look at it, it's like these things have happened in the past, and then the games come out, and they still sell way better on the Switch, especially when we're talking about like indie games and stuff like that. So, I don't know. Maybe it's like overall, like it's part of like just building a narrative. Like there's a lot of games coming to PlayStation. But yeah, you're right. I think a huge chunk of the games were on Xbox and Switch, and like there's like a handful. Like the last, I don't know, were those Square Enix ones? Is Diofield Chronicle exclusive? I don't know. Why don't they just do a Vagrant Story instead of whatever they were doing? A new Vagrant Story that looked exactly like Vagrant Story. That would be interesting. From Toog. I've been playing The Last Shantae, and a lobster girl showed up, and I said, oh, she's a meep to myself. This wasn't a question. I'll have to show that to Addie as well. Get a good opinion. Is this human lobster girl a meep? Thank you for that, Toog. From Super Much Brown. Super Much Brown. Hey, Jeff, is Xbox first party actually making any games? Is there some problem, or are they just waiting for E3 for some reason? The problem is they don't have a lot this year. We've talked about this. They don't have a lot this year. They have Redfall, Starfield, Forza Motorsport 8. And, the only one that really has a date is Starfield, right? I could see a world where Redfall easily gets delayed till next year. But those are the three first-party games that they really have. Grounded might go 1.0. Now that I think about it, pretty sure I checked in on that, and Grounded might actually not go 1.0 this year. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Like, once you get past those three games, it's much, much smaller side things that they might have at the most. And then when we get to E3, that's not going to change that all that much. They're going to talk about Starfield, and they're going to talk about their 2023. But yeah, it's those are the games this year. It's been that way for a long time. Like I wrote about that originally around like this like right after E3 last year is when I wrote about this. From Crumne. Hello, Jeff. First time I've been able to catch this live. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. 2 questions. 1, Mini Ninjas 2 when? Never. 2, do you think a return to office work will be good / bad / neutral for game development? I mean, I think the transition period, I think the period where management is trying to figure out whether they should force people back into the office or not is going to be a net negative for development. Because some people are going to be like, this is a time for me to leave because other people are not forcing people back in the office. I think game development's going to be one where it's going to be very hard to say you have to come into an office because the tight labor market, that shortage of talent is real. And if you are forcing people into an office, many people are going to be like, I just want to have the option to be able to work from wherever I want, at the very least, the option. And all of these other studios are willing to do that, and they will pay me either just as much or more if I leave to come join them. So why wouldn't I do that? And then every developer's going to be, oh, okay, well, never mind. You can work from wherever you want. That is already happened. And it's happened in a lot of businesses. I'm sure that in many people's businesses who are watching this, you've seen similar things. But it's definitely true in game development. A lot of people who are working in like Bay Area game development studios are now like, hey, listen, we'll keep working for you, but I'm not living here anymore. And many of them have already moved, and they've moved far away, and they're not coming back. So I've talked to people who've done that, and so yeah, I think that it's like overall it'll be like probably a small headache for management at many of these companies to be like, what does this look like? Oh God, I wish I could talk to somebody. But that person's just gonna have to be lonely, and I'm sorry to them. From Propaganda Panda, will Miyamoto ever stop being lame and let Square make a Super Mario RPG 2? Do you think that's what it is? It's probably what it is. But to me, I thought Square also doesn't want to work with a Nintendo IP anymore. Why wouldn't they? Because they work with I don't know. Do they work? What is their relationship with Disney? Because I mean, it felt like Kingdom Hearts was like the cheap replacement for Super Mario RPG. Like, oh, let's keep this idea going, but work with someone who's a little bit less demanding us make it a good game. That was the real problem. Here I go. I'm sorry. Jane's in chat. Super Mario RPG was like Nintendo being like, okay, Square Enix, make an RPG, but make it good. Make it fun. And then Square Enix is like, how dare you? How dare you tell us to make a game fun? We're going to go work at Disney, who would never tell us to do that. And the proof is all the Kingdom Hearts games. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. From N Carson 9. Hey, Jeff, do you have any insight on Bungie outright refusing to support Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck? Is it possible there was some mandate from Sony that's not allowing them, or are they just being lazy? Okay. I think their reaction to this is weird, but also understandable. Like, their prime directive is to make sure that people feel that their game is an honest and fair place to conduct business, to play the game. I mean, I guess their PvP is pretty important. To me, it's like, that's mostly a PvE game, so, oh, I'm losing frames, everybody. Hang on. I think it was just a slight hiccup. We're good. I see it mostly as a PvE game, so it's weird, but okay, whatever. Let's start from the beginning on this. Steam Deck runs a layer, a Proton layer between Linux and Windows games, and my hunch here is that, or no, they almost basically said this. Bungie's like, oh, that opens us up to a new vector for cheating, and we are already struggling to stop cheaters from all the vectors they already have on Windows. So introducing this new layer that we would then have to scale up for to counter is just a headache we don't want. And so we're not going to do it. And if you even try it, we're going to ban you. I think that is somewhat acceptable now. But going forward, I am not going to be mad at Valve or the Steam Deck when a game doesn't work on the Steam Deck. I am going to be mad at the developer. I'm already a little bit mad. WW2K, I'm trying to boot that up on the Steam Deck. Just flashes white, doesn't work. Am I mad at the Steam Deck? No, not even a little bit. I'm mad at 2K. That's how it's going to be. And I mean, this is me just talking about like my gut reaction to the experience, right? You know, it's like, oh, this big expensive system, it should just work. And is this a problem with the Steam Deck? You could see it that way if you want. But when I'm holding it in my hands and I'm playing Elden Ring, and Elden Ring's running better on this than it does on a bunch of other systems, on almost anything else, I'm like, obviously, these things are solvable. And if it's not working, it's almost certainly because the developer is just not considering this worthy of their time. But also, I wouldn't call them necessarily lazy, though, over Bungie. It's just anti-cheat is a real full-time job. It's a full-time concern, and it's ever-changing. And I bet it turns people's hair completely white. And saying, okay, asking those people to be like, okay, now you also need to support this whole new vector point of vulnerability. They probably were just like, we'll quit, actually. So if it comes down to that, like if it's that situation where it's just like putting too much work on your employees, they kind of have to make this decision. It stinks, but it is what it is. From Future Creep, Forspoken got delayed and will probably flop. Final Fantasy 16 is MIA. Is Squeenix in trouble? They have Final Fantasy 14. Is kind of the straight up answer to this. I don't know if Forspoken's going to flop. It seems interesting. It's PlayStation exclusive, right? And so it's going to get that rub, where it's just like, we're going to buy this specifically because Xbox fans can't. And you know that fanboyism actually does translate into sales sometimes. Like Returnal probably is like close to 1 million, selling 1 million copies, right? So if Returnal's selling 1 million, Forspoken, this big AAA, big budget game, it'll probably sell a couple million. But in Final Fantasy 16 being MIA, that's just, who knows? We don't know that that's a problem. Like, yeah, the game's probably still needing more time. But let's say both those games do go bad. Square Enix has Final Fantasy 14. That game makes a lot of money. It really makes a lot of money. So, no, Square Enix is not in trouble because of that. We say this a lot. Square Enix is lucky it has Final Fantasy 14, though, because if it didn't, it would be a different situation. From Sojak. Any Command & Conquer remake news? It seemed like the first one did well. I think that when I asked about this, because I think someone else asked this a similar question, and the answer was not now, not immediately. There's no plans immediately to do anything else with this. I believe that's right. I should double check before I just say stuff because stuff gets turned into news posts. But I'm pretty sure that when someone asked about this, a source was like, no, nothing happening right now. But I'll double check and I'll make if I'm wrong, I'll correct myself next week. From I am Dan the Man Stan. All right, I got it. Any idea what Zachtronics is working on? No, Zachtronics could just surprise me. It's been a year since their last game, which is usually about how long they take. No, I don't know. Don't know what they're working on. I guess we'll see. I'll be interested to see it, though. I'll say that. From Lysandus. Can you explain timed demos to me? For example, the Stranger in Paradise demo is only available until April. Why wouldn't a demo be permanent? I don't know. That is weird. To me, that sounds like a weird Square Enix decision where they're just like, if people could play a demo, they might see the game is bad, but they are already putting on a demo. I don't get it. Or maybe like, okay, once the game is out after, because it's coming out later this month, so why April? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry. You're right. This is just weird. There's probably some reasoning, and I bet you that reasoning internally is bad. I bet it's just some made-up bullshit that they're like, we'll take it off because of this. And everyone's like, oh, okay, is that a good reason? Yes. And then no one questions it, but it's actually a bad reason. From IG Chris, bets on Braid Anniversary Edition coming out this year. No. I'm going to say no. Probably going to be wrong, but no. From Minto, Rampage 2 Universal Tour has a meep that eats lots of people instead. Could be worth looking into. That's a good point. We have a Rampage arcade, the little arcade. What is it from company that makes the little arcade machines? Not the very little ones, but the little ones. My kids play it all the time now. Emmy found out how to turn it on and get it started, and actually started just playing through and beating the levels. I'm like, oh wow, you're just figuring this stuff out now. I guess you really are 5. From Paul W. Graham. Do you have any insight into domestic game development in China? What's the scene like? It's it's like it is around most of the world. There's a lot of talent in China, especially for on the technical side of things. They're very good at making technically beautiful games. We've seen this, like a lot of trailers from China blow up because they look so good. I think that they are in a weird spot because releasing a game in China is like there are a ton of people buying a lot of games in China, but there's also mostly people wanting to play live service, often competitive games, often games that have pay to win mechanics, because China is very much okay with that, where a lot of other territories aren't. And if you succeed in China, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed everywhere. And if you succeed in China, you are giving up a much larger cut to publishers and platforms than you are in other territories, because you kind of need a publisher to get on the platforms. The platforms are just, especially on mobile. If you're a mobile developer, it's like you need one of these big publishers who are going to take like 30 to 40%, and then they're going to put you on a platform that's going to take 30 to 40%. So you're talking about like an 80% cut, like overall of like what you're making. And there are so many different platforms, so you need a publisher. It's really hard to go your own. This is even worse, obviously, for foreign developers. But in China, it seems like the growing technical prowess is trying to meet the creative side of things. And they're like, okay, how can we bring this technical prowess to the rest of the world and succeed on a global market? And you see a lot of developers trying to do that. I think it's probably like one of those games is bound for a breakout hit in the next year or two. Even if they feel like they are like, oh, okay, this game kind of, with Kana, everyone's like, oh, this feels like a PS2 game. It feels like a lot of Chinese game developers are going to kind of be in that situation where like they are making gorgeous looking games that feel sort of like a throwback, but in a good way. And I would expect to see, like I said, one or two of those games to break out here in probably the next year. From Raihi, let's see, Feature Creep. Will the Amico TM ever come out? At this point, I'm going to say no. Probably not. It's kind of it just seems like such a messed up situation over there. Honestly, I guess right away, when I found out Tommy Tallarico was sort of in charge and like him, the way he talks about stuff, I get bad vibes. Did I talk about this last week? It just gives me bad vibes. And I'm like, the vibe alert has been set off as soon as he starts talking about going out and buying the Amico or the Intellivision name or whatever, and all these things that they're going to do. I'm like, you sound like the kind of person who is spending a lot of money. You know what it reminds me of? That Red 5 developer. The one that had the Firefall, is that the name of the game, that had the Firefall booth at every PAX, the giant Firefall booth. And then we found out years later that they had spent all this money and the game was in no good state and all that stuff. It reminds me of that. Like Tommy Tallarico struck me as a guy who would spend a lot of money, and the Miko is not quite ready for anything. That's what it is. Okay, from Raihi. How many times are we going to see 2024 during the season of Game Mest? Will we see any 2025s? We'll see a couple 2024s, probably. I think we are, we're at the point of the life cycle of these new consoles already where it's time for, like, what is now. I think when we were early on, we were getting stuff that's like, oh, it's not coming to 2023. They didn't even say that necessarily. But a lot of stuff wasn't coming until 2023. Because, like, okay, we're going to need some time to build up development on these consoles, and we'll do some cross-gen stuff. But the stuff that we're, like, really looking forward to, that's still a few years out. We are now at a point where it's like a lot of games have been announced, and a lot of them still haven't come out, especially on the Xbox side. This is a little bit less true on PlayStation because they've done a good job of getting many of those games out. They were cross-gen, sure, but they got them out. And we've God of War to look forward to, and then, like, what's after God of War? Like, probably a lot of surprising stuff, and they're probably going to come out with a lot of those things, and many of them could be 2024 because they're at like the reload period. But on the Xbox side of things, they are definitely at a point where it's like we need to release our 2023 games and talk about those before we can begin making new promises. So I think we'll probably still get a couple 2024s, but not a huge amount, not a ton, and probably maybe one 2025s, maybe one. That's gonna be fucked up. I'm gonna hate that. When we see that. All right, from Abs B. Hey Jeff, cheers for the great show. Thank you, Abs. I just wanted to ask what has happened to Scorn. Those images of the oozing orifices are burned into my nightmares, and I have to know if this game still wants to weave its somber tapestries. Thank you very much. Thank you for that prose. I don't know what's going on with Scorn. Can I be honest? Not that interested. I just have not been very interested in what's going on with Scorn. Not a big oozing orifice guy, personally. Wall genitalia, it's just not my genre. Yeah. So, I haven't looked into it, but I haven't heard much either, like just kind of like, by happenstance or anything like that. But it seems like the kind of game where it's just in a normal sort of needs more time, was not quite there. We need, we overscoped and under-delivered, and we need time to get this to where it needs to be. That seems to be what's happening with that game, if I had to guess. Grub Daddy, this is from It's X-Core. What's your opinion on Michael Pachter predicting PlayStation will not exist in 10 years? I'd have to see exactly what he said, but yeah. Did I tell the story? I think I told this on another podcast where I went to a Michael Pachter's party at E3, one of my first E3s, and it was right after I fell for an April Fool's joke, and he like tweeted about it, and I went to this party, and I'm like introduced myself, thinking he probably wouldn't remember that, and then he read my name and just did this, like shook my hand for a second, it was like really weak, and then read my Jeff Grubb, and he goes, ah, and then walks away, and hurt my feelings. But I told that was that I think I told this on GameSpeak Decides. I think it was what it was. Yeah. But no hard feelings towards Michael Pachter. I don't think he's right on this, actually. PlayStation, like, what does that mean? PlayStation doesn't exist in 10 years. Atari still exists, right? So what are we talking about? From Funkadoodle, does the video game companies or any tech company pulling out of Russia actually do anything? Or is it more of a good PR move for them? It just feels so hollow to me. So yeah, listen, it is both hollow and kind of the thing these companies need to do. I'll put it this way. If you, Funkadoodle, if someone from Russia were to come and say, hey, you have a nice thing, I'd like to give you money. Like if someone from like maybe like the official like Russian government, let's like put it that way, came to you, so I like your thing, can I give you some money for that thing? How are you going to feel about taking that money right now? Is there like at least a conflict, a question maybe? Like even if you're like, okay, this doesn't feel like it's going to affect anything, still though, I don't know if I feel great about it. Those are the questions these companies are really considering. And it's like, yeah, no one is saying this is going to help the war effort. And they are. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anyone in their press release be like, this is going to make the difference in Ukraine. It is much more about people feeling uncomfortable about financially benefiting from a country that is the aggressor in an invasion of its sovereign neighbor. And that is it. Like, I don't blame people. I don't blame companies for being like, we don't want to be in that situation. Now, there's a practical side to this. The ruble is in shambles and it's only going to go lower. No one wants to do business in the ruble. So, a lot of these companies support local currencies, take payments in local currency, and they don't want to deal with that right now. It's just not worth the headache. So if you're going to get a headache from doing business in that country, and also there are these ethical questions that are legitimately worth asking yourself, it is very easy to just pull the plug and be like everyone else, we want to at least show support, even though we know this is not going to make a difference on the ground. And the truth is like every little bit does stack up. Every little bit does make a difference in terms of putting pressure on Putin to stop. Now, it's going to get worse before it gets better. This is like the tantrum effect, where when you try to take away a kid's like tablet, which I've learned recently, they throw a tantrum and you have to ignore the tantrum and kind of get on the other side of it. And unfortunately, in this situation, the tantrum means he's going to escalate a war that's going to kill people. But we don't have a lot of great. And again, I'm not an expert on this, and I hate to speak so authoritatively on any of this stuff. I'm not an authority, but like you ask a question, this is the answer I have. We don't have a lot of options, because like going in there and getting into a hot war with Russia is very easily leads to nukes getting dropped. So don't love that idea. So the economic pressure is going to work, but it's going to work in a way that's going to lead to this like buildup of escalation, and then on the other side of it, him realizing there's no way out for him, and he has to just accept the diplomatic solution. At least that's the idea. And if I could contribute in any meaningful way to putting that pressure on him, I would. And McDonald's and Nintendo or whatever and PlayStation can all contribute pretty meaningfully, at least to like 0.5% or like 0.1%, but it all adds up.
1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds up. 1/10 of a percent. But it all adds
Propaganda Panda, will Advance Wars Reboot Camp release or do they cancel it? It'll release. This is like the other side of this where absolutely I get why you don't release your cartoon war game right now. But I bet if we go back and look at when the other cartoon war games from Nintendo released, I bet we could find a list of wars that were happening when those games came out. It is slightly weird that this war is different, and yet it's different in that it's getting all this mainstream coverage. That's the real difference. The difference isn't like, oh, it's like who it's happening to, because that's weird. If like, oh, it matters when it happens to these people, it doesn't matter so much when it happens to these people. That's weird and racist almost certainly. And so I don't think that really they're just like, we don't want to be like, there's news stories about war and tanks rolling in on people. This game is about war and tanks rolling in on people and taking over cities. Like, that's what the game is explicitly about. Moving your soldiers into a city, taking it over, then you get resources to take over more cities. It's just not a good look, so I get it. They'll release the game eventually, though. From Feature Creep, did you cave and kill the dragon? I've not killed the dragon. I'm at a point now where it's like 80,000 runes ain't shit. I mean, it's like 2 levels for me still, but that's not worth it. I'm glad I held off. I did feel moments of weakness where I was like, I'm just gonna go kill this sleeping dragon. Instead, I'm like, all these little dragons around here, I'll just sort of tear them up. I got the night and moon, or the night and flame sword or whatever. I just like Kamehameha those dragons, take them out pretty quickly. Get quite a few runes. I've stopped grinding so much though. I'm kind of just trying to move forward. Although I might need to grind to deal with Rodan, whatever his name is, Rodan. Casual, could you get Tokoto to stream some Planet Coaster? We could ask him. Maybe do a special monthly stream with him where he do his Planet Coaster or something. We'll ask him. We'll see what he says. From Mr. Sack, heard anything about the future PSN changes coming with improved cloud saves, as in true cloud save syncing like Xbox, a family plan, or being free, etc. I've not heard, but that's it's good. You bring up a good point. Like, cloud saves were not like anywhere in any of that stuff that I got my hands on. So maybe cloud saves are moving to being free or something like that. It seems like it's about time. It's like such a benefit to making sure that people who use your system never encounter something where they have this huge annoyance if they have to replace their system or move somewhere else and sell their stuff for whatever reason and want to bring it back. Yeah, I would move it to free, but you know, this is PlayStation, not Xbox, so it's a little bit different, but cloud storage is getting pretty cheap overall. From Retros, if you were challenged to the arcade pit, who would be your teammate? I'd probably bring in Mike Minotti, but if it's not Mike Minotti, I don't know. I think I'd like. I want to know someone who's good at games, so I'm trying to think. I'm like, I'll probably bring in. I used to run the family game night where we'd have everyone playing PUBG from like the game industry and stuff, and I watched Danny O'Dwyer be a fucking killer, just destroying people. So I'll bring in Danny O'Dwyer if I could, if he doesn't already have a partner. So there you go. From Cognitive Dissonance, Freakonomics podcast. I was just listening to that and was a little annoyed. Which thing? I haven't listened to the Freakonomics podcast recently, but I'm almost certain I said something that they talked about, because they cover a lot of topics that are covered by like also Planet Money and stuff that I do listen to. I got a new podcast book I'm very excited about. I think it's called The Battle of Bretton Woods, about when the dollar became the official currency of international trade and stuff like that. And it's about this battle between Harry Dexter White, who's eventually convicted of being a Russian spy, but he was like trying to get the dollar to be the currency of the world. And John Maynard Keynes was trying to come up with this plan to like create a new currency for the world, because he knew the British pound wouldn't be good enough because it wasn't backed by gold enough. Whatever. I'm very excited though. I'm gonna read the hell out of that book. From a Snake, I discovered Ghost Recon Breakpoint can be a good game without the online NFTs. Can a game like that be saved? I feel like we've seen so many games be saved and then also so many games be abandoned. It feels like it's sort of almost a flip of the coin it's arbitrary which ones are going to be saved and which ones aren't, and has little to do with actually the quality of the game when it launches, it feels like a lot of times. But I'm of the opinion that most games can be saved. I'm also of the opinion that we're at a point where continuously launching games that need to be saved is not a very good business model, and is probably puts a lot of stress on game developers who don't want to deal with that kind of stress in a market where they don't have to and can just go somewhere else where a publisher is going to wait long enough to put out a game when it's actually ready. From Downtempo, buying a Pavel Datsyuk retro jersey, Winter Classic or black/red Reebok alternate. Yeah, the Pavel Datsyuk is a former Detroit Red Wing, also from Russia, but I'm pretty sure all those things are just owned by the Detroit Red Wings. So I would go with the Winter Classic jersey, probably. I don't know. This is the thing. It's like all these individuals. Like I think a bunch of commercials that featured Alex or Ovechkin, like they pulled those off the air. Like, I don't know. He seems just like he's happy to be an American now. So, and if there's like a Russian, like this is something like people are doing, like they stopped like buying like food from like Russian restaurants in America. Don't do that. Definitely don't do that. Definitely keep supporting anyone who's here. From Mekon. Hi, Jeff. Always a good show. Do you think the stuttering problems in Ryzen will hurt AMD much? I don't know. It's tough to say. I think these are the kind of problems that are very easy to find when you're looking for them. And then when you're just playing games, for the most part, it's very easy to be like, was that stuttering because of the game or because of my hardware? I guess if it gets in your head, that's frustrating. And if it gets in your head, you might I'm losing frames again. Give it a second. Let's see. I am going to answer a few more questions. Luther Jennings asks, what's Mike's AEW connection? He's just been like, he's in the press. So as they've been building up this video game stuff, he's been staying in contact. But he also did once play Street Fighter with Kenny Omega. I had a meeting. I think it was like the ESPN. I don't know who sets this up. This is a bad sign probably. But someone like does like this thing where it's like, hey, come into the ESPN studios and which is right next to like LA Live and the convention center, and hang out and meet this celebrity and see all these like it was probably like Logitech or something. It was like, come see all these new peripherals and stuff. And so I went in there one year, and it was Bill Russell. Is that right? I think it was Bill Russell, who was very nice. Make sure I'm saying the right person. Bill Russell. Nope, not Bill Russell. I'll have to figure out. It was a basketball player who was very nice. And then the next year, it was like, oh, and then you come in, you play Street Fighter with Kenny Omega. And I'm like, Mike, I know you love Kenny Omega. Do you want to come with me? And he was very excited. It was the highlight of E3 for him. So I let him play Street Fighter against Kenny Omega. Well, I just stood back and kind of talked to people. From Casual, much has been said about GameCube emulation on the Steam Deck, but what about Wii emulation? Will the Steam Deck make my Mario Galaxy 2 dreams come true, Jeff? Yes. I would love to do a video where I was just like, here's how you set up like the touchpads to be a Wii controller so you can have Yoshi's tongue, and you want to have Yoshi's tongue. But also I'm like hesitant about covering a lot of that stuff because I know Nintendo's being very touchy. They've left my one video alone so far where I've kind of gone through all the emulation, and I showed some games running in Dolphin, but I didn't like linger on it. And there goes my frames again. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm sorry, everybody. We're going to wrap it up. Okay, I'm going to hop to the top here. Christian Argentina says, Jeff, there are doors that have wheels and some cars have only 2 doors. A lot of chairs have wheels too. I'm going crazy here. I don't know, man, but like buildings have thousands of doors and almost no wheels. Like if you think about it. And okay, yes, Twitch is eating me alive here. Let's get out of here. I'm going to do some research. All right. The wheels versus doors. Where did this come from? Who first? It feels like it. Okay. I don't know. Blackheart Vinyl, not a question, Jeff. Just want to tell you they dropped a big Overwatch 2 update during the show. Beta in April, and now they've changed the plan so that PvP will release sooner than PvE. Wow. Okay. Let's go take a look at that. Thank you for that, Blackheart Vinyl. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. Christian Argent, but those buildings have a bunch of chairs with wheels. They don't have that. Okay, I guess office buildings do have. Jesus Christ. Okay. I hate this. I hate this. I bet there's like a wheel manufacturer we could talk to who'd be like, no, like there are billions of wheels made every year. And there's no way there's that many doors. I don't know why we need to talk to him, but I feel this is important to me now. All right, everybody. Twitch is dying on me. My stream is dying, so I'm gonna wrap up. If you are watching live, thank you very much for putting up with this at the end here. If you're watching later, the recording should be just fine. Thank you very much. I'll be back next week with another new episode. Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.